Behind Hollywood's golden smiles, best friends were teaching teenagers how to take the pills that would end them. Mentors were destroying the stars who trusted them. And husbands were weaponizing their wives' deepest secrets for profit. Today, we're exposing 12 betrayals so shocking that studios spent millions to bury them, and revealing the one friendship that proved unconditional loyalty was still possible. Elizabeth Taylor and Debbie Reynolds, the 1950s. Debbie Reynolds, Elizabeth Taylor, and Eddie Fisher were Hollywood's golden trio. Not just friends, family. They spent every weekend together, celebrated holidays as a unit, and their children played in the same backyard. When Reynolds married singer Eddie Fisher in 1955, the wedding was a fairy tale, and Taylor stood beside her as maid of honor, wearing a lavender gown that matched Reynolds' color scheme. The image was perfect. Three beautiful, talented people who genuinely loved each other. America adored this wholesome threesome. Reynolds, the girl-next-door sweetheart fresh from Singin' in the Rain. Taylor, the breathtaking beauty who had grown up before the nation's eyes. Fisher, the crooner whose voice made women swoon and whose television show pulled in 15 million viewers every week. Reynolds later told interviewers, "I trusted Liz with my life. She was my best friend, my sister. I would have done anything for her." March 1958 brought tragedy that would test that bond. Elizabeth Taylor's husband, producer Mike Todd, perished in a plane crash in New Mexico. Taylor was devastated, inconsolable, unable to function. She had been married to Todd for only 13 months, but she had called him the love of her life. In her moment of absolute despair, she turned to her closest friends. Reynolds and Fisher rushed to her side immediately, canceling all professional commitments to be there for her. They stayed with her through the funeral, through the dark. Weeks that followed, through the nights when she couldn't sleep and the days when she couldn't stop crying. Fisher, with his gentle manner and soothing voice, spent hours comforting Taylor while Reynolds tended to their own 2 young children at home. It seemed like friendship at its finest, supporting someone through unimaginable loss. But what began as compassion was becoming something else. Fisher started spending nights at Taylor's mansion, ostensibly to keep her company so she wouldn't be alone with her grief. The nights at her mansion grew longer. The comfort is more intimate. Then the nights became more frequent. He was with Taylor more than he was with his own wife and children. Gossip columns began whispering about the amount of time Fisher and Taylor were spending together. Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, Hollywood's most powerful gossip columnists, started making veiled references in their columns. Reynolds, trusting both her husband and her best friend completely, dismissed the rumors as cruel speculation. She defended them both publicly, telling reporters that Elizabeth needed support and Eddie was simply being a good friend. She believed in them. She believed in their bond. She believed that friendship and marriage vows meant something. Then came the phone call that shattered everything. Reynolds was in her kitchen, wearing her apron, probably preparing dinner for Carrie and baby Todd, when the telephone rang. A reporter from one of the tabloids was on the line, asking for her comment on the affair between her husband and her best friend. Not asking if the rumors were true, asking for her reaction to confirmed information. Reynolds, stunned and confused, her hands beginning to shake, said there must be some mistake. The reporter explained that multiple sources had confirmed Fisher and Taylor were romantically involved and planning to marry. A stranger told Reynolds her marriage was ending and her best friend had betrayed her, not Elizabeth, who owed her honesty, not Eddie, who owed her respect. A reporter seeking a quote for the morning edition. When Reynolds confronted them, Fisher admitted everything. He was in love with Elizabeth Taylor. He wanted a divorce. He was leaving Reynolds and their 2 babies. Carrie was 2 years old. Todd was just an infant. To marry the woman who had been maid of honor at their wedding, the woman Reynolds had comforted through her own grief, was now taking her husband. Taylor, according to those who witnessed the confrontation, offered no apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the betrayal. She met Reynolds' tear-stained face with cool detachment, applying fresh lipstick as if they were discussing something as trivial as lunch plans. Taylor believed she and Fisher had fallen in love naturally, and that love justified everything. The fact that Reynolds was her best friend, that Reynolds had stood beside her during her darkest hours just months earlier, that Reynolds had 2 tiny children who would grow up without their father, none of it seemed to matter. The public reaction was swift and vicious. America had adored the wholesome trio, and now they felt betrayed alongside Reynolds. Taylor received threats against her life, was denounced by religious leaders across the country, and found herself nearly blackballed by Hollywood studios who feared the controversy. NBC threatened to cancel Fisher's television show. Sponsors pulled their support. But Taylor and Fisher didn't care. They married in May 1959 in a ceremony that seemed designed to flaunt their victory. Taylor wore a moss green chiffon gown, her favorite color, she told reporters, and smiled radiantly for cameras, while Reynolds wept at home with her children. The marriage lasted exactly 5 years before Taylor met Richard Burton on the set of Cleopatra and left Fisher for him, repeating the exact pattern of betrayal. She had destroyed Reynolds' family for a man she would discard. Within 5 years, Reynolds never fully recovered from the double betrayal. In interviews decades later, even after a public reconciliation with Taylor in 2001, Reynolds' pain was still visible behind her smile. She told Oprah Winfrey, her voice breaking slightly, "We were best friends. I trusted them both completely. How do you trust again after that? How do you believe in friendship when your closest friend can do something so cruel?" The woman who had brought joy to millions with her performances carried that wound for the rest of her life. Her children, Carrie Fisher and Todd Fisher, grew up knowing their father had chosen another woman over their family. Carrie would later write about the betrayal in her memoirs, describing how it shaped her entire view of relationships and loyalty. The betrayal didn't just destroy a friendship, it shattered a family and left scars that lasted generations. Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. Abandoning an addicted friend was unconscionable, but racial betrayal cut even deeper and revealed character in ways nothing else could. The Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, represented a brotherhood that transcended race in 1950s America. But the bond between Sinatra and Davis went far beyond their famous Vegas shows and Hollywood parties. Sinatra defended Davis against discrimination at every turn, personally confronting venues that tried to enforce segregation. He forced hotels to integrate or lose his business, which in Las Vegas meant losing millions. He championed Davis's career when other powerful figures wouldn't. When Davis lost his eye in a 1954 car accident, Sinatra visited him daily in the hospital, paid his medical bills, and promised him that nothing would change between them. Davis called Sinatra the only white man I'd take a bullet for, and meant it literally. Their bond seemed unbreakable, built on genuine love, shared struggles, and mutual respect. 1960 brought a test that would expose the limits of that bond. Davis fell in love with Swedish actress May Britt, and their relationship became serious. Britt was white, and in 1960 America, interracial marriage was still illegal in many states and socially condemned almost everywhere. Sinatra initially supported the relationship, understanding that love was love regardless of race. He even offered to host their wedding at his Palm Springs compound, a gesture that would have provided them protection under his powerful umbrella. But then Kennedy's team made a call, and suddenly Sinatra had a choice: Sammy's dignity or a seat next to power. President John F. Kennedy was running for re-election, and Sinatra had become deeply involved in the campaign. He was producing the inaugural gala, organizing celebrity support, and positioning himself as a key figure in Kennedy's inner circle. The access to power thrilled Sinatra in ways performance never had. He envisioned himself dining at the White House, advising the president, being remembered in history books. Kennedy's advisors, calculating votes with cold precision and worried about Southern white voters, saw Davis's relationship as a problem. They worried that a high-profile interracial marriage involving a Kennedy associate would cost crucial votes in states like Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. The pressure on Sinatra intensified. Kennedy's team gave him an ultimatum: either Davis cancels the wedding and keeps quiet about his relationship, or Sinatra loses his position in Kennedy's world. No more White House dinners, no more inaugural planning, no more access to the presidency. Sinatra faced a choice between loyalty to his friend and proximity to power. He chose power. He called Davis, and according to those who knew them both, Sinatra's voice was cold and final. "You need to call off the wedding, Sam. It's causing problems." When Davis refused, he loved Britt and was exhausted by hiding who he was, tired of letting white men dictate his personal life. Sinatra's response was swift and brutal. He disinvited Davis from Kennedy's inaugural festivities where the Rat Pack was scheduled to perform. He froze him out socially and professionally. Davis married Britt in November 1960, and the wedding photographs show a joyful celebration. Davis beaming in his tuxedo, Britt radiant in white. But Sinatra's absence hangs over every image like a ghost. Davis's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. He was heartbroken and humiliated. In his autobiography, Yes, I Can, Davis wrote about the betrayal with barely concealed anguish, describing how the rejection felt like a physical wound that never healed. He eventually forgave Sinatra publicly, or appeared to, because his career survival depended on remaining in Sinatra's good graces. They resumed working together, performed together, smiled for cameras together. But friends and family confirmed that Davis never forgot what happened. His daughter, Tracy Davis, later revealed that her father would sometimes sit alone after performances, staring at nothing. And when asked what he was thinking about, he'd say quietly, "Just remembering when Frank chose a president over me." Sinatra, who had preached racial equality and positioned himself as a civil rights advocate, had sacrificed his black friend for political access when it truly mattered. The hypocrisy was complete. Davis carried that wound until his passing in 1990, always knowing that when he had needed his friend most, Sinatra had chosen a president's approval over his dignity. If these betrayals are already breaking your heart, subscribe now because we're only getting started. The next story reveals how a mentor systematically destroyed the young star who trusted her completely. Joan Crawford and Marilyn Monroe. Sinatra, at least, had the excuse of political pressure. Joan Crawford had no excuse at all. Just pure, calculated jealousy that drove her to destroy the young woman who trusted her completely. In the early 1950s, Joan Crawford took young Marilyn Monroe under her wing when Monroe was still a starlet struggling to break into serious roles. Crawford was already an established icon, someone who had survived the transition from silent films to talkies and maintained her status for decades. She offered Monroe advice on dealing with studio executives, introduced her to influential people in the industry, and played the role of supportive Hollywood mother. Monroe, who had grown up in foster homes and orphanages without ever knowing stable maternal love, trusted Crawford completely. She called Crawford her guardian angel in a 1952 interview with Photoplay magazine, her voice full of genuine gratitude for the guidance. Fan magazines celebrated their relationship as Hollywood mentorship at its finest, publishing photographs of them together at parties and premieres, Crawford's arm around Monroe's shoulders, both women smiling for cameras. The image was perfect. The established star generously helping the rising talent, passing the torch to the next generation with grace and dignity. America loved the narrative of women supporting women in an industry notorious for pitting them against each other. According to multiple Hollywood insiders and biographers, including Donald Spoto in his comprehensive work, Marilyn Monroe, the biography, Crawford was simultaneously working to destroy Monroe's reputation behind closed doors. Industry insiders later claimed that when director John Huston was considering Monroe for a dramatic role in The Asphalt Jungle, Crawford called him personally. "Marilyn's a sweet girl," witnesses reported Crawford saying, her tone dripping with false concern. "But she's difficult on set. Unreliable. You know how these girls are. They can't handle the pressure of serious work." Monroe never knew why she lost. Opportunities she desperately wanted. Former Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer publicist Anne Strauss later revealed in interviews that Crawford would offer Monroe advice specifically designed to make her fail, suggesting she pursue roles that would typecast her, or pushing her toward directors known for exploiting young actresses. When Monroe's career began struggling in the mid-1950s, when she was fighting to be taken seriously as an actress rather than just a symbol, Crawford offered public support while privately celebrating each setback. According to those who knew both women, Crawford would invite Monroe to lunch at the Brown Derby or Romanovs, commiserate with her about the challenges of Hollywood while sipping martinis, offering sympathy and understanding. "It's so difficult for beautiful women to be seen as serious artists," Crawford would say, her eyes filled with apparent compassion, her perfectly manicured hand reaching across the white tablecloth to pat Monroe's. Meanwhile, she was ensuring those challenges continued by spreading doubts about Monroe to anyone who would listen. The motivation, according to those close to both women, was jealousy so pure it bordered on pathological. Crawford, watching her own career decline as Monroe's star rose, couldn't bear being replaced as Hollywood's glamour queen. Every magazine cover featuring Monroe instead of Crawford felt like a theft. Every role offered to Monroe instead of Crawford felt like a personal insult. Crawford had worked for decades to build her image through discipline and control, and now this young blonde was taking everything Crawford believed belonged to her with seemingly no effort at all. Monroe represented youth and a new kind of star that Hollywood was embracing, everything Crawford could no longer be. Monroe never knew her mentor was sabotaging her career and mental health. She continued to trust Crawford, continued to seek her advice, and continued to believe that Crawford cared about her success. She would show up at Crawford's house seeking comfort after a bad audition, and Crawford would embrace her, stroke her hair, tell her everything would be fine, then call a producer the next morning to plant more seeds of doubt. Only after both women had passed away did industry insiders begin revealing Crawford's campaign of destruction in interviews and memoirs. Crawford biographer Charlotte Chandler wrote that Crawford admitted to feeling threatened by Monroe's youth, though Crawford never acknowledged the act of sabotage. Monroe had desperately sought a mother figure to fill the void left by her traumatic childhood. Instead, she found a predator who used her trust and vulnerability as weapons. The psychological impact on Monroe, already struggling with abandonment issues and self-doubt, was profound and lasting. Grace Kelly and Rita Gam, While Crawford's betrayal was conducted in whispers and behind closed doors, some acts of treachery became public scandals that shocked an entire nation. In the early 1950s, Grace Kelly and Rita Gamm were inseparable roommates in New York City, two struggling actresses supporting each other through the brutal process of building careers. They shared a tiny apartment in Manhattan, splitting rent they could barely afford, sometimes eating nothing but crackers and cheese because auditions didn't pay and roles were scarce. They borrowed each other's clothes for auditions, practiced scenes together until 3 in the morning, and survived on dreams and determination. When Kelly's career took off first with High Noon in 1952, she didn't leave Gamm behind. She brought her along to Hollywood parties, introduced her to casting directors, and used her growing influence to help her friend. When Kelly traveled to Africa to film Mogambo in 1953, Gamm visited her on location. Their bond was so close that when Kelly became engaged briefly to someone else in a relationship that didn't work out, Gamm served as maid of honor, standing beside her in a pale blue dress. They were sisters by choice, not just friends of convenience. Kelly signed letters to Gamm. Your other half, 1956, changed everything. Kelly met Prince Rainier III of Monaco and faced an opportunity that seemed impossible, becoming actual royalty, a real-life princess. But there was a significant complication that Kelly understood immediately. Gamm knew too much about the real Grace Kelly. During their years as roommates, sharing confidences late into the night in that tiny Manhattan apartment, Kelly had told Gamm everything. She had confided about her affairs with married co-stars William Holden, Ray Milland, and Clark Gable, relationships that directly contradicted the ice princess image Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer had carefully crafted for her. She had discussed her deliberate calculation in choosing roles and relationships, explaining how she used her beauty and intelligence strategically to advance her career, which men to pursue for career advancement and which to avoid. Gamm knew that Kelly's pristine, untouchable image was pure invention, that behind the cool elegance was an ambitious woman willing to do whatever was necessary to succeed, to become Princess Grace, the fairy tale bride, the virginal royal, the symbol of purity that Monaco needed. Kelly needed to erase Grace Kelly, the actress, and everyone who remembered her true history had to disappear from her life. The transformation required wasn't just geographical or titular. It required rewriting personal history, and witnesses to the truth couldn't be allowed to remain. Kelly cut Gamm off completely and without explanation. The woman who had been maid of honor at Kelly's previous engagement didn't receive an invitation to what became known as the wedding of the century in Monaco. No invitation in the mail, no phone call, no explanation, no goodbye. Just sudden, absolute silence. According to Gamm's accounts in various interviews over the years, she tried reaching out multiple times, confused and hurt by the sudden abandonment. She sent a letter, then another. Each one came back unopened, stamped with the official Monaco Palace seal. She called the palace in Monaco. The operator said there was no one by that name. She sent a telegram on Grace's birthday. Surely that would get through. It came back marked, "Return to sender." Every attempt met with silence, until Gamm finally understood. Grace didn't just want distance. She wanted Gamm erased, removed from existence as thoroughly as if their friendship had never happened. Kelly constructed a careful mythology of herself for Monaco and the world. She was portrayed as innocent, pure, devoted to duty and family. The ambitious actress who had navigated Hollywood's complex politics and had relationships with powerful married men couldn't exist in that narrative. Anyone who remembered that version of Grace Kelly threatened the fairy tale Monaco was selling. Gamm, devastated and confused, eventually stopped trying to reach her former friend. She sat in her New York apartment, surrounded by returned envelopes, each stamped with official rejection, and photographs of her and Grace laughing together in happier times. In a 1982 interview conducted after Kelly's passing, Gamm spoke with obvious pain still evident in her voice. Grace decided, "I knew too much about who she really was. I became a threat to the fairy tale she needed to create. I understood why she did it. But that didn't make it hurt less. We were supposed to be sisters." Kelly had sacrificed their friendship, a bond built during their most vulnerable years, to protect a manufactured image. The woman who had shared her deepest secrets, who had believed in her before anyone else, was discarded like an inconvenient reminder of an unwanted past. Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. But Reynolds' betrayal was intimate and personal. The next betrayal was industrial, a system that destroyed children for profit, and one friend who showed another exactly how to participate in their own destruction. Mickey Rooney taught Judy Garland how to survive Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. He showed her which pills kept you awake for 18-hour shoots, Which ones let you sleep for 4 hours before starting again? How to function on the chemical roller coaster the studio demanded. What he didn't teach her was how to stop. And when she couldn't stop, when the addiction destroyed her, he walked away and acted like he'd never handed her that first pill. From 1937 through the 1940s, Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney were Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's golden children, starring together in 9 films, including the beloved Andy Hardy series. They weren't just co-stars thrown together by studio executives. They were genuine best friends. 2 teenagers thrust into the brutal machinery of Hollywood who understood each other's struggles in ways no one else could. Both faced crushing pressure from studio head Louis B. Mayer, who would scream at them in his office if they gained even a pound or showed up looking tired. Both worked grueling days that stretched from dawn until midnight. Both carried adult responsibilities while still children themselves. Rooney became Garland's protector on set, her confidant during difficult moments, the one person who truly understood what she was going through. In interviews, Garland called him my dearest friend, the person who understood me better than anyone. Rooney called her the most talented person I ever knew. Behind the wholesome Andy Hardy image that America loved, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer was systematically harming both teenagers to maintain impossible production schedules. The studio doctors gave them amphetamines, little pills that made their hearts race and their hands shake, to stay awake for marathon filming sessions, then barbiturates to force sleep for just a few hours before. The cycle starts again. According to Garland's own accounts, documented in her daughter Lorna Luft's memoir, Me and My Shadows, Rooney was the one who showed her how the system worked. Being older and more experienced, already caught in the cycle himself, he explained which pills did what, how to manage the artificial rhythm, how to keep going when your body was screaming to stop. Mickey showed me the ropes, Garland later told her children, describing how he demonstrated the routine with the casual expertise of someone who'd been doing it for years. He'd hand her the pills between takes, tell her when to swallow them, warn her when the crash would come. Rooney has denied this account, but studio records and witness testimonies confirm both were given substances by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Rooney, being 3 years older, was already navigating the system when Garland joined him. What began as survival became a trap Garland could never escape. By her late teens, her body couldn't function without the pills, the amphetamines in the morning to wake up, the barbiturates at night to sleep. Her natural rhythms of sleep and wakefulness were destroyed, rewired by years of chemical manipulation. She would spend the rest of her life battling dependency, cycling through rehabilitation attempts, relapses, and increasingly erratic behavior that would eventually cost her everything. Her hands developed a tremor that became visible on camera. Her weight fluctuated wildly, ballooning up then dropping dangerously low. Her ability to show up on time, remember lines, or function normally deteriorated with each passing year. The betrayal came when Rooney's career stabilized, while Garland spiraled into chaos. As her addiction worsened and her behavior on set became unpredictable, Rooney quietly distanced himself. When Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer fired Garland in 1950, after she failed to show up for filming, her body too damaged by pills to maintain the schedule, Rooney didn't defend her publicly. He didn't use his influence to help her. He didn't acknowledge his own role in introducing her to the substances that were destroying her. When Garland attempted to end her life multiple times during the 1950s, slashing her wrists in hotel bathrooms, overdosing on pills, spiraling into depression so profound that friends feared each phone call would bring news of her passing, Rooney didn't visit, didn't reach out, didn't offer support. When she struggled to find work and faced financial ruin, performing in small venues for a fraction of her former salary, he didn't help despite his continued success in Hollywood. The cruelest aspect of the betrayal came in Rooney's later autobiographies and interviews. He portrayed himself as the responsible one, the professional who had maintained his career through discipline and dedication. He described Garland as unstable and unreliable, someone whose problems were self-created. He never acknowledged his role in her introduction to addiction. He never accepted any responsibility for showing her the pattern that destroyed her life. When interviewers asked about Garland's struggles, he shook his head with apparent sadness and talked about talent wasted through lack of discipline. Garland's daughter, Liza Minnelli, confirmed in interviews after her mother's passing, her voice tight with controlled anger, Mickey was never there when Mom needed him most. He helped create the situation that destroyed her. Then he walked away and judged her for it. She never stopped loving him, but he broke her heart by abandoning her. Garland passed away in 1969 at 47 years old. Found alone in the bathroom of her London townhouse, her body and spirit broken by decades of addiction and the wounds of abandonment. The friend who had been her protector, her guide through Hollywood's darkest corners, had left her to face the consequences alone. The girl who had sung "Over the Rainbow" and given joy to millions never found her way back from the damage that began with a friend showing her how to swallow pills to survive. David Niven and Errol Flynn. Abandonment for a crown was cruel, but some betrayals involved actively profiting from a friend's darkest secrets after they were too deceased to defend themselves. Errol Flynn and David Niven were inseparable throughout the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. They were roommates in Hollywood's early days, sharing a beach house they nicknamed Cirrhosis by the Sea because of the legendary parties they hosted. They were drinking partners who closed down bars together, wingmen in romantic pursuits who covered for each other's indiscretions, brothers who had survived Hollywood's chaos side by side. When Flynn faced charges in 1942 that threatened to end his career, Niven stood by him publicly, testified as a character witness in the courtroom, and defended him when others turned away. Their friendship seemed to have survived everything. Scandals that would have destroyed weaker bonds, divorces, professional setbacks, and personal demons. They had seen each other at their worst and loved each other anyway. October 1959 brought tragedy. Flynn passed away in Vancouver at 50 years old, his body destroyed by years of alcohol abuse and hard living. Niven mourned publicly, gave touching tributes to his dear friend in interviews with tears in his eyes, and seemed genuinely devastated by the loss. Hollywood watched Niven grieve and sympathized with a man who had lost his closest companion. Then, 12 years later, in 1971, Niven published his autobiography, The Moon's a Balloon. The book became an international bestseller, praised by critics for its wit and honesty. It was also filled with salacious stories about Flynn that violated every understanding of friendship and confidence. Niven detailed Flynn's private moments in ways that seemed designed for entertainment rather than honoring memory. He described Flynn installing two-way mirrors in their shared beach house to watch female guests undress without their knowledge. He revealed details about substance use, drinking binges, and reckless behavior. He exposed vulnerable moments Flynn had shared in confidence, moments when Flynn had broken down crying about his failures as a father, moments of doubt and fear Flynn had trusted only his closest friend to witness. In one particularly painful passage, Niven described Flynn weeping drunk on their bathroom floor at 3 a.m, confessing his fear that he was a failure and a fraud, that his entire swashbuckling image was a lie he could no longer maintain. The portrayal was devastating to Flynn's legacy. Niven positioned himself as the responsible, sophisticated one who had tried to help his troubled friend. Flynn became the reckless, self-destructive fool who couldn't control his appetites. Every story served to elevate Niven, while diminishing Flynn. Flynn's family, including his daughter Deirdre Flynn, was devastated and furious. They publicly criticized Niven for the betrayal, pointing out that Flynn couldn't defend himself or provide context for the stories. The things Flynn had shared in confidence during their most intimate moments of friendship were now entertainment for millions of readers. Critics celebrated Niven's honesty, but those who had known both men recognized the book for what it was: a violation of friendship for commercial success and career revival. Niven's acting career had been declining, and the book resurrected his public profile and finances, earning him more money than his last 10 films combined. When questioned in interviews about whether he felt any guilt about exposing his deceased friend's secrets, Niven claimed he had written with affection and that Flynn would have understood. But affection doesn't expose a friend's most vulnerable moments to millions of readers for profit. Niven had calculated the timing perfectly. Flynn had been gone long enough that public sympathy had faded, but not so long that people had forgotten who he was. The betrayal was complete and profitable. Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance. Passing away couldn't stop some betrayals, but television's most beloved friendship was hiding a completely different truth from the American public. In 1951, I Love Lucy premiered and became America's #1 show almost immediately. Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance's chemistry as best friends, Lucy and Ethel, seemed effortlessly genuine. They finished each other's sentences, got into trouble together, and represented female friendship at its most joyful. For 7 years on I Love Lucy, and then through various revivals and specials, America watched them and believed they were genuinely friends in real life. Press interviews reinforced this image carefully. Magazine spreads showed them laughing together between takes. The show's entire premise depended on audiences believing in the authenticity of their bond. But between takes, in the dressing rooms where cameras couldn't follow, Ball would light a cigarette, check her makeup in the mirror, and talk to everyone else on set, treating Vance like furniture. According to cast and crew accounts documented in multiple biographies, the reality was starkly different from what America saw. Ball, as both star and producer, controlled every aspect of the show, including Vance's physical appearance. The most notorious example of this control was contractual and undeniable. Ball required Vance to maintain extra weight to ensure she never threatened Ball's position as the glamorous star. This wasn't rumor or speculation. The requirement was written into Vance's contract in black and white, specifying that Vance had to weigh at least 20 pounds more than Ball at all times. Ball also controlled Vance's wardrobe choices, ensuring Ethel always looked frumpy while Lucy wore fashionable, flattering clothes. She dominated storylines and made certain Lucy always got the spotlight, the best lines, and the most sympathetic character moments. According to Desi Arnaz's autobiography, Ball viewed Vance as an employee whose purpose was to make Ball look better, not as a friend or equal creative partner. Lucy never thought of Vivian as anything but a supporting player. Arnaz wrote, Vance deeply resented the control, particularly the weight clause, which she found personally humiliating. She was a talented actress, forced to diminish her own appearance to serve someone else's ego. She also resented what she privately called Ball's egotism and need to dominate every scene. When Vance won Emmy Awards in 1954 and 1955 for Best Supporting Actress, Ball's congratulations were reportedly perfunctory and cold. According to witnesses on set, Ball seemed annoyed rather than happy that Vance was receiving recognition. She gave Vance a brief hug for cameras, then turned away without another word. The women maintained professional courtesy on set because the show's success depended on their apparent chemistry, but they avoided each other otherwise. They never socialized outside of work requirements. They never had dinners together unless the press was present. They never developed the personal friendship that audiences believed existed. The betrayal wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was a sustained lie, performing friendship for profit while feeling mutual resentment week after week, year after year. When I Love Lucy ended its initial run, they rarely communicated. When Ball created Here's Lucy in 1968 and wanted Vance to reprise the Ethel character, Vance initially refused flat out. She was tired of being controlled and diminished. She only agreed when Ball offered an enormous salary for limited appearances, making clear this was a business transaction, not a reunion of friends. When Vance passed away in 1979, Ball attended the funeral and gave a touching eulogy, praising their beautiful friendship and the joy they had brought to millions. She spoke about Ethel and Lucy as eternal best friends, her voice breaking with apparent emotion. But according to cast members who had known them both, including Ball's own daughter Lucy Arnaz, it was Lucy's final performance. Two talented women had been forced to pretend friendship for decades, unable to escape the roles that had trapped them while making them wealthy and famous. America's most beloved female friendship was, in its truest form, a business arrangement sustained by professional necessity. These betrayals keep getting worse, don't they? Which one has shocked you most so far? And what Golden Age topics should we cover next? Hidden scandals, forgotten romances, or the truth behind classic films? Let us know in the comments below. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland. Forced friendship was painful, but family, betrayal between sisters who should have been natural allies, revealed how deep resentment could grow and fester for decades. When Joan Fontaine's name was called at the 1942 Academy Awards ceremony, she stood in shock, her face frozen in disbelief. She turned to her sister Olivia de Havilland, sitting beside her, hand extended to share the moment of triumph. De Havilland refused to shake her hand, turning away in front of Hollywood's elite and millions of radio listeners across the country. The cameras captured Fontaine's humiliation. Her hand hanging in the air, her smile crumbling, her eyes filling with tears she fought to contain. But this public humiliation was just the beginning of a betrayal that had roots in childhood and would last until both sisters were in their graves. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland were Hollywood's only sister act to both win Academy Awards. But their success came at a terrible cost to their relationship. Born 15 months apart, in Tokyo to British parents, they were intensely competitive from early childhood. Both became actresses in the 1930s, with de Havilland finding success first in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood in 1938 and Gone with the Wind in 1939. Fontaine struggled in her older sister's shadow, landing smaller roles and facing constant comparisons in the press. Every interview included questions about Olivia. The studios deliberately encouraged their rivalry, recognizing the publicity value in a sister versus sister narrative. Fan magazines ran polls asking readers which sister was more beautiful, more talented. Their mother, Lillian, clearly favored Olivia, often commenting that Joan was the difficult one while Olivia was naturally gifted, sometimes saying it right in front of Joan. The breaking point came at that 1942 Academy Awards ceremony. Both sisters were nominated for Best Actress, de Havilland for Hold Back the Stir, Dawn, Fontaine for Suspicion. The tension in the room was palpable, as Hollywood's elite waited to see which sister would triumph. That public handshake refusal became one of the most famous moments in Oscar history, a photograph that would appear in newspapers across the country. Fontaine later described the public humiliation as something she could never forgive. But according to Fontaine's account in her autobiography, No Bed of Roses, an even worse betrayal came years later. She claimed that when their mother was near the end of her life, De Havilland told her that Fontaine didn't want to visit her, that Joan was too busy with her career. Fontaine maintained that she only learned of their mother's passing after the funeral had already taken place, and denied the chance to say goodbye because of her sister's interference. Whether this account is entirely accurate remains disputed. De Havilland never confirmed it. But Fontaine believed it completely and never forgave what she saw as the ultimate act of cruelty. The sisters never reconciled. For more than 40 years, they refused to speak to each other, appear at the same events, or acknowledge each other publicly. When both were invited to Hollywood functions, elaborate arrangements were made to keep them separated. Different entrances, different seating areas, different departure times, as if they were warring nations rather than sisters. When De Havilland was asked about potential reconciliation in interviews over the decades, she gave cold, dismissive answers. "Some wounds don't heal," she said in one interview, her voice icy. Fontaine was more open about the pain in her later years, writing that her sister's jealousy had destroyed their family. When Fontaine passed away in 2013, reporters immediately contacted De Havilland, then 97 years old, asking for comment. Her response came through a publicist and was brief, formal, and contained no personal warmth. De Havilland passed away in her 20s, never having reconciled with her sister, never having acknowledged any regret. Two women who shared a childhood in Oscar glory couldn't overcome the betrayals that had festered between them for more than 7 decades. Robert Taylor and Barbara Stanwyck. Sister betrayal was rooted in lifelong competition. But some friendships were destroyed by a single choice to prioritize ambition over loyalty. When Robert Taylor passed away in 1969 from lung cancer, Barbara Stanwyck's private reaction, according to her friend and biographer Ella Smith, was simply, "He broke my heart, and I never got it back." What had this man done to wound her so permanently that even his passing couldn't heal it? Barbara Stanwyck was already a major star in 1936 when she met Robert Taylor, one of Hollywood's highest-paid actresses. Taylor was a strikingly handsome young actor with limited range, struggling to be taken seriously beyond his pretty face. Stanwyck fell deeply in love with the younger man. She was 28, he was 24, and she used her considerable influence in Hollywood to transform his career. She personally spoke to directors about giving him better roles. She introduced him to studio executives and vouched for his potential. She coached him on acting technique, helping him develop skills he'd never learned in his rushed studio training. She publicly praised his talent in interviews, lending her hard-earned credibility to his reputation. They married in 1939, and Stanwyck continued championing her husband's career at every opportunity. She turned down prestigious roles because they conflicted with his schedule. She accepted smaller parts in films so they could work together. She used her friendships with powerful people in the industry to ensure he got leading roles. Her support and guidance transformed Taylor from a shallow pretty boy into a respected leading man. His success was built substantially on her foundation. By the early 1950s, the dynamic had shifted dramatically. Taylor's career had surpassed Stanwyck's as she aged, and roles for older actresses became scarce while he continued strong. According to friends and biographers, Taylor began resenting the woman who had made his success possible. He wanted to believe he had earned everything through his own talent and work. He began having affairs, including a serious relationship with a young co-star. When Stanwyck confronted him about the infidelity, he allegedly told her coldly, "You're too old to expect faithfulness, Barbara, and too controlling to deserve loyalty." The words struck her like physical blows. In 1951, Taylor filed for divorce. The official reason given to the press was incompatibility. But Hollywood insiders understood. He wanted a younger woman and freedom from the wife who had created his career. The final betrayal came in the interviews Taylor gave after their divorce was finalized. He portrayed Stanwyck to reporters as a domineering older woman who had controlled him throughout their marriage. He claimed he had felt smothered by her success and trapped in her shadow, never acknowledging that he had eagerly accepted her help. He suggested that marrying an older, more successful woman had been a mistake that had held him back. He remarried quickly to actress Ursula Tease, who was 13 years younger than Stanwyck, making the humiliation public and complete. Stanwyck was devastated by the betrayal and the public humiliation. She threw herself into work, accepting any role offered to maintain her career and her dignity. But she never fully recovered emotionally. Friends reported that she never seriously dated again after Taylor. The wound too deep and the lesson too painful. She had loved him completely, sacrificed her own career advancement for his benefit, and been repaid with abandonment and public mockery. She carried that wound for the remaining 20 years of her life, never able to trust enough to love again. Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth. Taylor's betrayal destroyed Stanwyck's ability to love again. But some betrayals involved exposing someone's deepest trauma for public entertainment. When Rita Hayworth married Orson Welles in 1943, she was Hollywood's #1 attraction, the sultry goddess whose image in Gilda had made her the most desired woman in America. Welles was the brilliant young auteur behind Citizen Kane. Their marriage seemed like a union of Hollywood royalty, beauty, and brains combined. Behind closed doors, Hayworth confided in Welles about her deepest trauma, something she had never shared publicly and that would destroy her carefully crafted image if revealed. She told him, in whispers late at night, when darkness made confession easier, that her father, dancer Eduardo Cancino, had violated her throughout her childhood while they toured together as a dance act. From the time she was 12 years old, forced to perform as her father's partner in nightclubs and seedy theaters across the country, she had endured harm that scarred her permanently. This revelation, given to Welles in the most intimate moments of trust between husband and wife, explained so much about Hayworth's insecurity and her disconnection from her own image. She also shared with him her profound sense of fraudulence, captured in her famous statement, "They go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." She felt completely separate from the confident, sensual persona the studio had created. The marriage deteriorated quickly. Welles proved to be controlling and repeatedly unfaithful. By 1947, Hayworth discovered she was pregnant with their daughter, Rebecca. She hoped the baby would bring them closer together and save their failing marriage. Instead, Welles asked for a divorce while she was still carrying his child, explaining he needed intellectual stimulation she couldn't provide. Hayworth, heartbroken, had to endure the tabloid coverage and public speculation alone. Welles provided minimal financial support and showed little interest in his daughter after she was born. But the worst betrayal was still to come. In various interviews throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Welles began sharing details about Hayworth's childhood trauma, things she had told him in absolute confidence as his wife. He discussed her complicated relationship with her father in ways that clearly referenced the harm without stating it explicitly. Rita had a very unusual relationship with her father, he told one interviewer, his tone heavy with implication. He revealed her feelings about the Gilda image in ways that made her seem damaged and unstable. He portrayed her as a troubled woman he had tried to help, positioning himself as the sophisticated intellectual who had attempted to save her from herself. Hayworth was humiliated and helpless. The traumas she had, carefully hidden from the public, were now entertainment for gossip columns. She couldn't defend herself without confirming the stories explicitly. Welles had weaponized her most painful secrets to make himself appear superior and to justify his abandonment of her while she was pregnant. The things shared in a marriage bed, the vulnerabilities exposed in moments of absolute trust, had been turned into public spectacle for his benefit. Hayworth never fully recovered from having her deepest wounds exposed by the man she had trusted most completely. She struggled with relationships for the rest of her life, never able to trust that level of intimacy again. She passed away in 1987, and those who knew her said she never forgave Welles, never stopped feeling the sting of that ultimate betrayal. Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift. Welles exploited Hayworth's trauma for his own image. But amid all these betrayals scattered throughout Hollywood history, one friendship proved that loyalty was still possible, even in a corrupt system. Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor met in 1951 while filming A Place in the Sun, and their connection was immediate and profound. Both were extraordinarily beautiful people trapped by their physical appearance. Both were valued more for their looks than their considerable talent. Taylor knew Clift was attracted to men and struggling with self-hatred in an era that criminalized his identity. Clift knew Taylor's marriages were desperate attempts to escape loneliness. They became each other's safe harbor, the one person who truly understood, who wouldn't judge, who wouldn't betray. May 12, 1956, brought a moment that would test and prove their bond forever. After a party at Taylor's home in Beverly Hills, Clift was driving down the dark, winding road when he lost control of his car and crashed into a telephone pole. The impact was devastating. His face smashed against the steering wheel with such force that his beauty was instantly destroyed. Taylor heard the crash from inside her house, a sickening sound of metal and breaking glass. She ran down the dark road in her evening dress and high heels, her heart pounding. She found Clift barely conscious in the wreckage, choking on his own blood, his face unrecognizable. His jaw was broken in multiple places. His nose was shattered. 2 teeth had been knocked loose and were lodged in his throat, blocking his airway. Without hesitation, Taylor reached into his mouth with her bare hands, pulled out the teeth slick with blood, and held him while they waited for the ambulance. Her dress was soaked in his blood by the time help arrived. She saved his life that night. But her loyalty didn't end with the physical rescue. Studios wanted to drop Clift from upcoming projects, claiming he was too damaged to film. Taylor fought them with everything she had. She refused to work unless Clift was cast opposite her in Suddenly Last Summer in 1959. "Either Monty works or I don't work," she told the producers, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. When his addiction to pain medication worsened after the accident and his behavior on sets became erratic, Taylor protected him. She covered for him, fed him lines off camera when he couldn't remember them, and refused to let anyone criticize him. She defended him to directors, producers, and fellow actors. Clift passed away in 1966 at 45 years old, found in his bedroom, his body destroyed by years of pain and addiction. Taylor was heartbroken, but even in her overwhelming grief, she never betrayed his secrets. She never discussed his attraction to men publicly. She never detailed the extent of his struggles. She never wrote a memoir. She never used their friendship to elevate her own public image. When asked about Clift in interviews during the decades after his passing, she simply said, her voice soft with emotion, "He was the love of my life." Not romantically, but something deeper. In a business built entirely on exploitation, their friendship remained sacred. This is what all the other betrayals in this documentary destroyed. A bond where loyalty mattered more than self-interest, where protecting a friend was more important than protecting a public image, where love, platonic, pure, and unconditional, survived everything Hollywood's corruption could throw at it. Taylor's devotion to Clift shows us what Hollywood could have been, what all these other friendships might have become if the people involved had chosen differently. If this story of loyalty moved you after witnessing all these betrayals, please hit that like button and share this video with others who love classic Hollywood. One final betrayal remains, the feud that became Hollywood legend. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Taylor's loyalty to Clift showed what was possible when someone chose friendship over self-interest. But our final story reveals the most legendary betrayal of all. Two queens who destroyed each other when they could have ruled together. In the early 1930s, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were both contract players at Warner Brothers Studios, rising stars navigating the brutal machinery of the studio system. They weren't close friends who spent time together socially, but they shared genuine professional respect. Davis studied Crawford's performances to learn technique. Crawford admired Davis's fearless intensity. They occasionally shared dressing rooms during busy production periods and compared notes on dealing with difficult directors. The rivalry between them was friendly at this stage, even productive. Two talented women pushing each other to improve. Then came Franchot Tone. In 1935, Crawford married the handsome actor despite knowing that Davis was deeply in love with him. According to accounts from people close to both women, Davis had confided her feelings about Tone to Crawford, believing they had enough mutual respect that Crawford wouldn't pursue him. Davis had spoken about Tone with obvious emotion, describing him as different from other actors, more intellectual. Crawford listened, nodded sympathetically, then pursued him deliberately. She married him anyway, and Davis experienced the union as a deliberate theft, a calculated act of cruelty. The professional respect they had shared curdled into something much darker, a hatred that would consume them both. The wound festered for decades until 1962 brought an unexpected opportunity. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was a gothic horror film about two aging sisters, one a former child star, one a former glamorous actress, trapped together in a decaying mansion, torturing each other. The casting of Davis and Crawford in these roles seemed perfect. The film became a massive critical and commercial success, reviving both women's careers and earning Davis an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Crawford, devastated by being overlooked for a nomination while her rival was celebrated, couldn't bear the possibility of watching Davis win the Oscar. She launched a calculated, ruthless campaign behind the scenes. She personally called Academy members, lobbying them to vote against Davis. Betty's performance was good, she would say, her voice dripping with false praise. But don't you think Anne Bancroft was more deserving? She positioned herself as a supporter of all the other nominees, offering to accept the Oscar on behalf of anyone who won, but couldn't attend the ceremony. Her motivation was transparently vindictive. Even if Crawford couldn't win, she would ensure Davis didn't either. When Anne Bancroft won Best Actress for The Miracle Worker, Crawford's plan reached its calculated culmination. She swept onto the stage at the Santa Monica Civic Auditoriums in a silver gown, accepted Bancroft's Oscar from the presenter, and held it triumphantly while Davis sat in the audience, forced to watch. The cameras captured Davis's face, Shock, humiliation, and rage barely contained behind a forced smile. Her hands were clenched in her lap. The message Crawford sent was unmistakable. Even if she couldn't succeed, she would sabotage Davis's success. The betrayal was complete and witnessed by millions of television viewers. The feud escalated into open warfare after that night. The two women were scheduled to work together again on Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, but Crawford claimed illness and withdrew from the project. Davis replaced Crawford with Olivia de Havilland and spent years afterward mocking Crawford's supposed illness in interviews. Joan got sick, Davis would say with a knowing smile. Very conveniently sick. Both women gave increasingly vicious press interviews over the next 15 years, each trying to destroy the other's reputation. When Crawford passed away in 1977, a reporter immediately called Davis for comment. Davis's words became legendary. "You should never say bad things about the deceased, only good. Joan Crawford is gone. Good." The cruelty was shocking, even by Hollywood standards. But Davis wasn't finished. She spent her remaining years giving interviews that painted Crawford as jealous, vindictive, desperate, and pathetic. Crawford's daughter, Christina, released her memoir, Mommy Dearest, the same year Crawford passed away, portraying her mother as an abusive monster. Some observers speculated that Davis had encouraged Christina's project, or at least taken satisfaction in Crawford's posthumous destruction. Even after passing had ended their professional rivalry, the betrayal continued through public attacks on Crawford's character. Two of Hollywood's greatest talents could have lifted each other up and changed the industry's treatment of aging actresses. Instead, they spent decades trying to destroy each other. The betrayal that began with Franchot Tone in 1935 lasted until Davis's own passing in 1989, consuming both women's emotional energy and defining both their legacies as much as their considerable artistic achievements. These 12 betrayals reveal the darkness lurking behind Hollywood's golden facade. Debbie Reynolds never fully trusted female friends again. Sammy Davis Jr. carried Sinatra's rejection forever. Barbara Stanwyck never dated after Taylor. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland passed away without reconciling. Yet Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor proved loyalty was possible. Most chose self-interest. They chose each other. Thank you for watching this journey through Hollywood's most devastating betrayals. If these stories have given you a new perspective on the Golden Age, please hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment telling us which betrayal shocked you most. Was it Elizabeth Taylor stealing her best friend's husband, Frank Sinatra, abandoning Sammy Davis Jr. for political access, or Bette Davis and Joan Crawford's legendary feud? And let us know what classic Hollywood topic we should explore next. Hidden scandals, forgotten love stories, or the truth behind iconic films. Till next time, this is the Golden Age Files, revealing the complicated truth behind the legends we love. Thank you for watching.